actually a day trader for a little while. So.
Welcome to the Predictive Playbook. I'm your host for show number 4 today on Wednesday, April 14th, 2021. And I'm pleased to have Greg of GDog Sports making his debut on the Predictive Playbook. He has 8,746 followers and growing. He's from Escondido, California, which that makes him automatically a good friend of mine, that's for sure. And, I talked to him backstage about this, and he said it was okay. So today's his birthday. If you want to give him a big shout out in the chat room, that's always a nice thing to do, I think. So he covers all sports. Gotten to know him. Big shout out to Over Under Girl, and for setting us up here, and appreciate that. And I think we share a couple commonalities. He did some day trading and stockbrokering, I understand, and. Greg, welcome to the show, and I'll give you the mic here, and if you want to give us a little bit of your background, how you got involved with this, it's all yours.
Well, I've been sports betting by myself probably since like 94, 95, but my dad was big time into sports betting for a while. He ran numbers at his plant, and then he also, when I was 15, I had a summer where I just did nothing but keep track of all the box scores for him, all the pitcher stats, everything like that. I had an Apple IIe. They had the old dial-up modem, and my dad had a bulletin board out in Las Vegas or something. We'd log on to that like every couple of days or whatever, try to get some additional information. I mean, it's crazy compared to nowadays, all the stuff that's available at your fingertips, basically. But I had to do it the old-fashioned way back then. So
that's awesome. Keep going.
I always had a love for sports, so it just kind of got me to where I was always big time into football and baseball. I played them, and I loved watching them. And unfortunately, I grew up in Minnesota. I'm a Vikings fan.
And they had some good years. I guess not too many recently, but
yeah. My dad was always like, I only have a couple more seasons. I only have a few more before I'm not here anymore. So unfortunately, they never got to the Super Bowl again after that. So, but yeah, they had the 4, kind of like the Buffalo Bills of the 70s and early 80s, I guess.
Well, with all due respect to the Buffalo Bills fans, I mean, I can't imagine losing 4 consecutive Super Bowls in a row, but they lost them to some pretty good teams. But I think that last one, if I remember right, was pretty much a blowout, and then that was kind of it. But it just shows how hard it is to win the Super Bowl. Period.
We had the dynasty of the Cowboys teams back then. It was amazing teams that they had put together. And again, at the expense of the Vikings, the Herschel Walker trade pretty much built those teams.
Oh, it did. It did. I mean, there's no argument with that at all. But, at the time, nobody had ever done a trade like that. Minnesota obviously thought that they were getting the better part of the deal. And in hindsight, which is always 2020, they clearly didn't. But they're only a few pieces away.
They are. It's always that. I mean, this offseason, they had a pretty good offseason. They signed some key defensive players and stuff. So that was a big thing looking forward to. So
J.K. Parrish here. I know this guy. He wants a stock tip. I guess because we gave out the Wall Street background. I would say sell.
No.
Not being facetious, but it's starting to get. Well, actually, we can segue into this. And I'm not trying to steal your debut here by any stretch, but I'm sure you look at better sentiment.
Not at all.
And I track that. I have a couple Python apps that go into Twitter. I'm a Twitter developer, and it gathers up 2,222 tweets with what they call stop words that then are tied to the hashtag of that particular team. So if we're looking at Cleveland versus Charlotte tonight, I would use those hashtags, and it would come up with a quantitative measure of their sentiment. So if the sentiment is incredibly bullish, it's contrarian, and vice versa. If you have a situation where, right, exactly. So in the marketplace right now, my sentiment reading is hitting 80, and one of the highest in many years, actually going back to 2012. And that, unfortunately, is a sign that we could be topping. Now, it could chop around. It could get the sentiment down to 60 and digest and then go higher. But, Apple is in the mid-30s with a price-earnings ratio, and that always has been a bit of a concern, especially as big as they are. But so, JK, I would say find a stock to short. In all seriousness, but do you agree with that, Greg?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
It's too frothy.
Were shortable. Well, like Peloton was one of the stocks around December, so it was a great one to short. And there's some other ones too, but yeah, when you get like the FANG stocks and all the popular stuff is blowing up and keeps going up, there's going to be a point to where it's not going to go up anymore. So it's kind of like the stairs up and the elevator down is the whole mentality of that. It's nonstop cycles since the beginning of the stock market, always the same way.
Yep,
I've read a lot of
always
books.
Repeat.
The same a lot of stock trading books.
Yep.
All the same.
We had in '98 during the Taiwanese crisis, we had Warren Buffett on our desk, and he was hugely famous then, but not anything compared to the massive popularity he enjoys now in his elder years of his, I think he's 93 now. So, that gives me hope that I have at least, 50 more years to go. I'm not that young, believe me. But, during that time, he made things so simple. And one takeaway I always had, and it applies to the betting markets, is that you have a seesaw, and on one side is fear, on another side is greed. Right now, our stock market is kind of greed. Nobody's afraid that it's going to go down, and that's when tops occur, and then conversely, the opposite. So when you see betting, and you read a couple articles from different sites, and they're all saying, boy, Chicago is going to beat Orlando tonight like a bad habit, and Chicago's favored by 9.5 as I'm looking at it, and I'm just using this as an example. This is not a real play.
Yeah.
If that's the case, then you really truly want to start looking at Orlando and figure out for yourself whether they have a chance to cover and maybe even win the game. That's how I use the sentiment and the figures associated with it. But now I'll give it back to you because it's your show.
No problem. So that's all very helpful. Obviously, one of the key strategies I've used over the years is the public going against the public, so to speak. So when you have that heavy sentiment on one side, it's always prudent to go on the other side. So it's especially true like in football, NFL especially, because you have so many guys that just bet with their emotions and don't actually have any types of systems or anything. So it's kind of funny on my Twitter once in a while, I'll run polls and stuff, and I actually tracked it for a while, and almost every single poll that had the majority of the votes, the opposite was the play. It's almost always that way. So, but as far as betting goes, I used to drive down to Tijuana from San Diego on Saturday mornings, go down and place my bets.
Wow.
And I couldn't get up for work, but I'd get up early on Saturday morning and drive down to TJ's. And then I'd go back the next week and get my it's only a 45 minutes hour drive from where I live, so it was not too big a deal. But then
wow.
In the late 90s, I had probably about 10 or 15 offshore accounts before they kind of blew that whole thing up too, with the 9/11 happened, and then they snuck that in the Homeland Security bill. They're making the internet gambling illegal or what have you. So pretty much took that off for a while. So then I kind of dabbled here and there, and then met a girl, got married, had kids, took a couple years off for the most part, and then pretty much for the last 3-4 years now, I've been pretty active. Like probably about 3-4 seasons ago, I started posting all my plays on Twitter for baseball. I did that the entire season. That's how I met Over Under Girl and some of the other people that she was involved with. And then so it's been about 2.5-3 years now, I think, where I've been them. And then obviously last year was a real down year with the sports and everything. It was really sucky, but I was trying to, mean, I know there's people doing ping pong, which is ridiculous, and watching guys at 2 a.m. with beer stained T-shirts over in Russia trying to make money. I'm like, nah. If you don't think that was fixed, you have no idea. You should not be betting sports.
Yeah, if you won, you weren't smart.
Then also some of the and they got mad and they walked off. So, whoever had action on that game. So, and then I read a couple things about like Belarus or something. Some guys made like a ton of money, obviously, from stuff that was fixed. And you had like plus 600-700 odds, and it was crazy. But, I dabbled in some esports. I looked at AFL and rugby and pretty much everything. I just threw my hands up in the air after a while. I just like, no, can't do it. So luckily when things kind of started up back again last fall, then none of my formulas worked though, because you had the bubble, and then the NBA didn't want to play defense for whatever reason, it seemed like. So
yeah,
every table I calculated was totally wrong all the time. So it's kind of crazy for a while. And baseball was kind of that way too. And did really well in the playoffs though in baseball, because it's a little easier to kind of figure out who the teams are and the pitching and things like that when you have the matches. But when you have so many games on a daily basis, it's really hard to kind of pinpoint exactly who's going to show up on what days. Or, I mean, as an example, last night, Blake Snell went 2/3 of an inning. I mean, the guy had a 2-run lead heading into the bottom of the first. And, they were talking about, he's trying to, work on staying in games longer and pitching further into the games. This guy made it 2/3 of an inning. I mean, it's crazy. So blew up. I mean, the Padres were heavy favorites last night. So,
that was shocking.
That.
Yeah. That was completely shocking.
And then the NBA drives me crazy sometimes too. And it was like last week. I mean, I play a lot of totals, and then you always get these dead. Put in all the scrubs. There's plenty of, just probably like a 20-point lead at the time. And there's like way under the total. There's no way, like with 5 minutes left, 6 minutes left. And then all of a sudden, fouling, buckets, triples. You there? Okay. So, buckets, triples, raining threes all over the place, no defense. And it's like, I think the total went over by 1. I was like, God, that's so freaking annoying. Stuff like that. I love watching the bad beats on ESPN. It's funny because I bet a lot of volume, so I don't really pay attention too much to the scores. I look at my scores and my results at the end of the day, and then I'll watch SportsCenter sometimes and I'll be like, oh, that's why I lost that one. That's why I lost that one. But I find myself, I end up watching the contest, I get very emotional. So I just eliminate that. It's kind of like day trading or being a stockbroker. You got to take the emotions out of it.
That's so true.
Like a business. Treat it like a business and just put in. I mean, I was killing college basketball. I think I hit 57% this season, totals and sides.
For you?
And then probably 56, 57% right now in NBA. Struggling a little bit with hockey at the beginning and kind of getting that worked out now. Baseball is just killing me the first part of the season so far. But I'll work it out eventually and figure that out too. Usually hit around a little less ratio, probably 56% or so. But I mean, it's tricky with all the run lines and stuff, and depending on if you're taking dogs and things like that. So
yeah, it's more like units one is probably more important than the percentage in the money line sports of baseball and hockey, for example.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, my college tournament was terrible. I had 5 consecutive years of profits in the dance, 9 of 10, and now it's 9 of 11. And I was very lucky. I played the under in the championship game. And how lucky was that they're at 137 with 6:35 to go in the game, and somehow by just sheer luck, it stayed under 159.
The over was 159 and a half, I think. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean there was some shockers there. But any games today you want to take a look at as free picks, because for the people in the chat room and who are going to listen to this in archived fashion, we're going to have Greg on here as often as he's available and wants to come on, and eventually we'll team him up with some of the other guys that you like and yeah, we'll have like a 3-man panel, and it'll all be good.
Cool.
So
Yeah, there's several games in the NBA tonight. Obviously, there's Milwaukee's playing at Minnesota early, which starts probably about half an hour or so. Stay away from that game
4:30.
for the moment. Yeah. So it's just kind of one of those games where you don't know what the Wolves are doing. I know Giannis is out, and I know that Towns is out. So, it's hard to figure out what's going to happen in that game, especially the way the Wolves play. I mean, it's just they've had so many hard luck losses, but now it's kind of at the point where you're getting later in the season. You don't know what the sandbagging the NBA does, regardless if they want to talk about it or not. It does happen.
Yep.
So,
fully agree.
As NBA is tough, though. It's like one of those, you don't know every day who's going to show up and who's not. And that's like, I remember Larry Bird had a very thing was like when he was coaching, and the reason he got out of coaching because he could not stand the fact that these guys did not bring it every single day. He just couldn't handle it. So you look at all these players getting rested and all these guys taking days off. I mean, look at Durant went off last night, but his first couple games back from injury, he wasn't really doing much. And the Lakers blew him out last week with Durant and Irving. So, I mean, go figure. It's very up and down sometimes. So
and the Clippers too.
Yeah. Clippers, that's the biggest thing I have the problem with the Clippers is like they're always talked about as this elite team. Oh, yeah, you got Kawhi, you got Paul George, blah, blah, blah. But they don't bring it every day. And it's like then you can't hustle at the end of the season trying to get that chemistry or trying to turn it on and off. You can't do that. But they seem to think they can. And every time I see them lose to like a bottom tier team, like especially like just the worst of the worst, the NBA, they'll go get lose to them. And it's just like, that's not championship caliber basketball. It's like you can't, you got to be consistent. This year they're a little bit better with it. I mean, Paul George has kind of stepped it up a little bit, I think. But I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's still kind of like they don't have that killer mentality. It's kind of like Kawhi has already been there, done that, but he doesn't seem to have like that killer mentality. Paul George, I mean, who the hell knows what's going to happen with that guy on a daily basis?
Yep.
And they don't really have much.
Very true.
So, and the Bucks drive me nuts too. They're another team that turns it on and off. They play down to their competition for some reason. Like you expect them to blow out a team by 20 points and they're favored by 14, and then they'll lose or they'll barely win by like 2 points because they got lucky towards the end or something. It's just those teams are like better to avoid. But in terms of what's going on tonight, I mean, I like Brooklyn at Philly. I actually like the money line on that one. You can get them around plus 200 odds or so. And
it might be
being on the road,
higher.
Heading to, I think it is. They're favored by the spread's 8.5 now. The Philly is, so it's a good opportunity tonight to do that. I also like the Miami Heat, which is let's see who they're playing. They're playing Denver tonight in Denver. I do like that money line as well. Denver's kind of been sporadic, and then they got the big injury now to Jamal Murray. So it's they played a few games without him pretty well, and Gordon's been pretty filling in with them, and Joker's always doing a good job, but they're again in a spot where the Heat's at full strength going into Denver, and I think that with the defense that the Heat's been squeezing down on people this year, I think they have a legitimate chance to win tonight. They have the Wizards I like tonight as well, and they're playing at Sacramento tonight. So they're only favored by 2 at this point, but being on the road, Sacramento's very short-handed tonight. So they don't have a lot of depth, and
that's for sure
in a good spot where I think Washington actually might be able to put it together. And kind of like Toronto the other night, they suited up 8 players. I mean, it's kind of like a no-brainer pick if you're paying attention. So, when you don't have a rotation of more than a handful of guys, it's really difficult on the starters. And then again, it gets to motivation. You don't know. It's like, oh, well, what are we going to do? It's like a lot of these guys. I mean, I just turned 51 today. So being in my early 20s playing professional basketball and knowing, kind of that generation and the stuff like that. I mean, they just don't have the work ethic that they used to have back in the day. I mean, you look at basketball compared to like Jordan Barkley and all those guys back then, and you watch some of the highlights on YouTube and whatever else. I mean, anybody that hasn't watch like old school basketball needs to go find a highlight tape from that era, because guys just get the crap beat out of them on a nightly basis.
Yep.
I mean, there's so much tugging and pulling under the basket, guys getting into fights and just like hardcore fouls and all that stuff. Totally different game. That's kind of what drives me crazy with these guys nowadays. Is like these basketball players, they're like divas nowadays compared to them. It's funny sometimes watching like TNT and stuff. You see like Shaq and Barkley. They're always calling out these younger generation of players because they just don't have that work ethic. It's like they grew up kind of. I mean, obviously they're elite athletes, but I mean they kind of come from that whole participation trophy generation. And it's just like these guys have been coddled. You look at even LeBron is the only one I can compare kind of to being where he has some killer instinct, because he's just so good. Like he can literally take over the games and stuff like that. But he has that champion mentality that always comes every night. But you could see like, with Anthony Davis and stuff, he's kind of like a deer in the headlights when LeBron's not out there. He's getting a little better this year, but last year was so evident, because now he's a champion. So he's got a little bit better idea of what he needs to do to perform at a high level. But so basketball can drive you nuts for sure. I know my dad bet a lot on baseball and football, and he's like, man, basketball would always kill me. Like everything that he won from football, he'd lose in basketball. It's because, there's so many variables with that. You have so many fouls too. It's like, it drives you crazy. There's a game about 2 months ago, I think it was the Clippers, and I can't remember who else was playing, but it was the Clippers, and the over-under was like way out of reach. Way out of reach. There's like less than like 2 or 3 minutes left. It was on bad beats. This is one of spinning there for a second. I don't know if it goes off or not. You can see me. You're frozen right now. There you go.
Yeah, there's something going on with the connection. I apologize. Hopefully everybody can see this, at least in an archived version, because while you're talking and I'm listening, I'm trying to figure out what the heck's going on here.
I've been in a weekly fantasy.
This is crazy. Can you hear me?
There we go. Might be my connection.
Well, I'm not sure. You're refreshing, so I have no clue to what's happening here. So if anybody can hear me, I certainly apologize for this. Can you hear me now, Greg?
Yeah.
I hope this is just like a bug here. Is there any way you can come back on tomorrow?
Yeah, absolutely. No
because I'm afraid that this recording, it may actually be fine, but if it's not, to be fair to you, I want to have you back on so we can have it work. I use StreamYard, which has been outstanding. I know a lot of other pros that use it. But every once in a while, and I run at a gigabyte speed. But now it seems to be working better.
Yeah. I think we're good.
Yeah, now this is weird. But I was going to ask you a question before we do sign off. But I want to have you on tomorrow so everybody knows you're coming back on tomorrow in case this ends up being a bad audio or video show, which I apologize for. It's on me. But you mentioned the two dogs, Brooklyn, and the second pick you mentioned in the NBA was
Miami.
Now, would you consider parlaying them together on the money line?
You could take a small flyer on them for sure, but for myself personally, I'm a straight better. I don't really do too many money lines and parlays and things like that. I just found like my style best fits just doing straight bets. If I hit out a high percentage, I just
Yep.
Yeah. So
the guy coming on next
Yeah.
is Ira Silver, and he
Okay.
is truly one of the only guys I know that can play parlays across sports, money lines,
Wow.
spread, and every once in a while he'll nail a 4-teamer, a 6-teamer. It's kind of nuts, and I've seen his tickets, so I know it's not, I know it's not crap. But still, with the exception of him, anybody that is listening, especially if you're just starting out, I think Greg would agree with me that the last thing you want to start doing is trying to play these parlays to make the big killing, because it's not likely to happen. And I think you just froze again. On your birthday, I'm doing this to you. Oh, goodness gracious. Hey, Greg.
That's definitely on my end. I think I had a disconnection or something. So anyway, I apologize for that. So we were talking about parlays and guys hitting money line parlays and stuff. Yeah, I mean, I've read stories about some guys hitting some killer parlays. There's a show on ESPN Plus that it's called Better Days, and I've seen they only have like 4 or 5 episodes.
Yep.
They dramatize like this whole like 20-minute episode with this guy, and he's betting like a 14-team parlay on the tournament, and he hit it. And then they're like, "Well, how much money did you have on it?" He's like 70 cents. He won like $1,400, but I mean, it's still like 70 cents. He had less than $1 on the damn.
Wow. I mean, $7 would have paid 14,000.
Yeah, exactly. Like why? What the hell? But I mean, there's guys out there that I've seen doing thousands of dollars parlays and stuff like that. But I mean, if you have a system and it works, that's the whole key about trying to bet for a living or even be good at betting is to have and find a system that works for you and just like rinse and repeat. It's like the Spurs mentality back in the championship days. It's just like, just go out there, wash, rinse, and repeat. And it's just over and over and over. So last year I tried to adapt to different sports and different things that I wasn't familiar with. Soccer drove me freaking crazy. Esports. I mean, I'm sitting there watching one time and I'm like, I can't believe I'm betting on kids playing video games. This is stupid. It's like stuff like that. So, but there's guys that make a lot of money at it. So, I mean, it's like they get paid a lot of money, but I mean, there's also guys that like they're in that generation and they know a lot about it and they know, which teams and what games and all that type of stuff, and they can make a legitimate profit on it. So, it's not a one size fits all. There's plenty of people that are killing it in tennis and sports as well. But my bread and butter is college and football pro. And then I like college and pro basketball pretty much are giving me the best returns. Baseball as well as one of my best ones. Hockey is kind of, it's never been like my top sport. I like hockey. My kid plays hockey, but it's kind of, I don't know enough about the players and different things like I do in the NBA or college or pro football. It's just like I know a lot of the players. I know the teams. I know the whole thing, how it works and stuff. So, but I mean, like college football last year, I hit like 60%. And like college pro football was a little harder. Probably still like 56, 57%. It's still profitable, but not like my best season or anything. There's some days where I had some pretty bad beats on some stuff.
Yep.
But it's all about finding out what works best for you. So this business is definitely not a one-size-fits-all type of business for sure.
I hope everybody can hear it too, because 57% is a good season. And you have to be careful out there in the internet world, because you're going to find guys that are going to tell you that they've hit 75% for the last 10 years. And yes, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but just know that is just not true. Some of the best scenes that I ever had just occurred in football, and that was in the mid '60s, and everything just went right.
Yeah.
And not every season is just going to go right. But Greg, let's plan on having you back, and I'll mention in the chat room after this if I'll get comments. I'm sure direct message whatever everybody could hear. I suspect that it probably is on my end, to be honest with you, because it's happened once before, and like I said, I have the gigabyte speed and then some.
Yeah. But technology, is not perfect.
Yeah, it is. But I'm really glad to have you on the show here on your debut. I apologize for the video content being on your birthday. But let's plan on tomorrow about the same time, if that works for you, mid-afternoon.
Yep.
And we'll make sure that everything is running perfectly, and then everybody can get to know you, because my plan is to have you on here quite a bit whenever you can come on, because I know you're going to bring a lot of value to the shows and a lot of good betting strategies and stuff that's going to help people become better bettors, including myself. So it's all very good to have you on board.
Thank you.
So we'll conclude here, and this I always end it the same way because of superstition. But for GDog Sports, myself, and the Predictive Playbook, may all the wins be yours.